It's an elusive concept, or at least it has become that way over more recent years. The American dream was formerly a widely held belief that anyone, no matter who their parents were or where they came from, could achieve success in the United States. This dream encompassed not only socioeconomic mobility and financial freedom, but also homeownership, access to affordable education, and free will, the right to live your life the way you want to. In describing the American dream just now, I probably triggered you at least once, but more likely multiple times. That's not the goal of today's blog. Today, I want to talk about a new version of the American dream, one that I don't think anyone will want to argue with. Challenge accepted. I believe the American dream is to live tax-free. And here's why. In my career as a mortgage lender, I have worked very hard over the past 12 years. And the harder I worked, the luckier I got. I'm the child of immigrants who came to this country in pursuit of the American dream, to create a better life for me and my brothers. And I know this because it was said countless times, repeated over and over. When I told my dad that I was going to make $250,000, he was so proud, he quite literally lost his mind. And then the next year, I hit 7 figures. This is where it got interesting. I wondered after that year, where did all my money go? Did I blow it up on Chanel bags? I started scratching my head. And I was freaking out a little bit because I give people advice on money all day. Am I a fraud? Am I irresponsible? So I analyzed my spending. That year, I had finished funding all 3 of my kids' college funds. We had purchased a second home and a duplex for investment purposes. I had maxed out my 401k and also contributed the most that I was allowed to an IRA. I had also saved up enough money to pay for childcare, including a full-time nanny for the next year, because I was unexpectedly pregnant with said 3rd child. I still was scratching my head. Where did the rest of my money go? And then it hit me. I had earned $1 million. I didn't get $1 million. I only got less than 65% of that after taxes. So let me pause here. I understand that taxes are a requirement for our society and to support the infrastructures of our cities and states. I used to be a bleeding heart liberal, so allow me to continue without accusing me of not caring about my country or my community. Just stick with me for a minute. I started paying attention to real estate investors, especially the ones who were my clients, because I had access to their tax returns. This is when I became obsessed, literally, with the US tax code and how it was written specifically to benefit entrepreneurs and real estate investors. You guys, this is a contract we sign, every single one of us, with the US government, and very few of us actually understand it. So I wanted to change that, for at least myself personally. I spent a year doing a deep dive on tax strategies and interviewing CPAs all over the country. The amount of mansplaining I had to endure, let me just tell you, it was painful, but worth it. I'm not licensed to give you tax advice, so I'm going to have to end my personal story time here, but I will say this. Educating myself on the tax code has not only changed my life, it will significantly impact the trajectory of my children's lives by creating generational wealth, but more importantly, changing my viewpoint on what wealth truly means in this country. Let's talk about the tax code then, okay? Why? Because it sunsets in 2025. When Donald Trump was elected president, he pushed through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which included several temporary changes to the tax code. It lowered tax rates for all tax brackets and increased the standard deduction, which made tax preparing easier for a lot of people. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I want to call it the TCJA, but I'm not going to be able to figure that out. So we're just going to call it the Tax Act. Also doubled the child tax credit. And this got a lot, S corps were allowed to deduct up to 20% of their business income. But what got the most attention from the media was the corporate tax cuts. He reduced the corporate tax rate by 14%. Whoever is president in 2025 will need to extend this or sign new rules into law. And this will likely dominate the entire first year of their first term. They may not extend them because there were some downsides to these cuts. That Tax Cut Act increased the national debt significantly. If renewed, it will cost the government $5 to $10 trillion in revenue over the next decade. and that's according to the Congressional Budget Act and Bipartisan Policy Center. It was criticized for only benefiting high-income earners, and it didn't boost economic growth as much as Trump said it would. If reelected, Trump has promised to lower the corporate tax rate even further. He also wants to make tips for waiters tax exempt, as well as Social Security benefits tax exempt. This could lead to higher interest rates, guys, because as the national debt surges from a loss in revenue, that drives up interest rates. He hopes to offset the loss in revenue with higher tariffs and eliminating green tax credits, energy tax credits. Tariffs are tough on inflation, though, and inflation is the enemy of mortgage interest rates. So that also could have a negative impact. Let's shift our focus to Harris's plan, see if it's better. Along party lines, she wants to extend Trump's tax cuts for individuals earning less than $400,000, but those earning more would revert back to the previous tax rate of 39.6%. For corporations, she wants a tax rate in the middle. It was 35% before Trump's Tax Act. He wants it to be 15% now. Harris thinks 28% is reasonable. She's getting a lot of heat for wanting to tax unrealized capital gains. That would be tough to track and enforce. Harris also proposed a lot of tax credits. She wants to further increase the tax credit that Trump had increased, plus give $6,000 to families with newborns in the form of a credit on their taxes, not a check in the mail. She wants to give first-time homebuyers $25,000 in down payment assistance and give business startups $50,000. She agrees with Trump on not taxing waiters on their tips. When we total up the changes she wants to make in terms of cuts and credits, her proposed changes would generate $2 trillion in revenue for the government. The flip side is that the Tax Foundation, a Washington think tank, thinks her plan would reduce the GDP 2% over the next 10 years. We all know that Congress will stand as a hurdle for whoever is elected president. They will be highly motivated, though, because there is a deadline. These provisions, the current tax code, sunsets. So a solution has to be put in place, and the president will leverage that to get a bill through that they like. So that's my lesson today, friends. Hopefully it gives you something interesting and productive to discuss at happy hour this weekend.